Israel's military says that it's recovered the bodies of two hostages close to Gaza's biggest hospital. 19-year-old Israeli Corporal Noah Marciano and a 65-year-old Yehudit Weitz were both found in the structure close to the Al-Sharifa hospital. It comes as soldiers continue their operation nearby, following claims it has been used as a base for Hamas. Joining me now is Orly Goldschmidt, spokesman for the Israeli embassy. Orly, harrowing news coming out of Gaza as the operation to target the Hamas terrorists takes place. That is ongoing, and obviously there are hundreds of hostages still being held by Hamas. What hope is there to try and get those hostages back alive, which is the thrust of the military operation?
As you mentioned, we have recovered the bodies of Noah Marciano, a teenager, and Judith Weiss, who was a kindergarten teacher. Her husband had been murdered by Hamas, and they found her body just 2 days ago. And it is devastating news. We also have clear evidence that there were hostages that were hidden underneath hospitals, including Al-Shifa hospital. And to be honest, you know, I'm wearing today a shirt of 32 children that have been abducted by Hamas, but there are about 239 hostages, and we don't know the situation. We don't know how they are treated, if they are, you know, getting the medication they need. I have here, for example, a young girl her name is Abigail. She has seen her parents murdered in front of her eyes, and then Hamas took her. She's only 3 years old. Wow. And there is a girl here. Her name is Emily. Today is her birthday. Yeah. She was supposed to celebrate her 9th birthday. And also she's been taken alone. And you have a baby here, Kfir Bibas. He was only 9 months when he was taken, abducted. And there are so many horrified stories. So we need to raise awareness about those people that have been abducted. We don't know the situation, but I can tell you that we're doing everything we can in order to bring them back safely to their families.
And that really is the sort of the thrust of the military operation, is both to neutralise the threat from the Hamas terrorists and to bring these hostages home. More widely, here in the UK, we had a vote this week in Parliament, and there's a big debate going on about whether more humanitarian pauses are required or whether we should have a ceasefire. The British government and, in fact, the official opposition, the Labour Party, together collectively opposed that call for a ceasefire. The British population is quite split, but why is a ceasefire not the correct thing for the British government to support? It hasn't supported it, but you could say why for the Israeli government and the soldiers fighting in Gaza would a ceasefire be wrong?
So I'll remind everyone that on the 6th of October, there was actually a ceasefire. And when the Hamas murderers came into our villages, they broke that ceasefire and they decided to come and rape, behead people, burn people alive. And forgive me, I'm going to be gruesome here, but they have been people who have witnessed, for example, at the Nova Festival, that there were women and young girls that have been raped, gang raped by people. We even found a piece of paper on Hamas people with the exact word of how to say in Hebrew, take off your pants. So you can imagine the horrible things that they have done to them. They have mutilated certain parts of their bodies. There's a video that many people have seen of a woman who was heavily pregnant, and they cut her belly off. They killed the unborn baby, and then they murdered the woman. And that's just few stories. So I want to remind everyone who are calling for a ceasefire while Hamas still have capabilities, that it's actually saying, we don't mind if that 7 October happens again. We need to make sure that Hamas have no more capabilities to destroy Israeli families, that Hamas have no more capabilities to to murder young babies, that Hamas have no more capabilities and that we will be safe in Israel and that Palestinians as well will be safe in the Gaza Strip, because we know that Hamas are using Palestinians as well as human shields. All they want is to murder as many people as possible.
And we've seen not just the vote in Parliament, but big protests here on the streets of the UK. I think what those protesters would say, and some politicians who supported the ceasefire, is there is a desire for peace and a desire for the pursuit of a two-state solution. Now, it's very clear from what you've said that as long as a terrorist organisation, Hamas, has the capability to target both Palestinians and Israelis in the state of Israel, that isn't going to be possible. What has to happen to look for peace, to ensure that we can start discussions around a two-state solution? What has to happen really to try and bring this conflict to an end from Israel's point of view?
So first of all, it's not another round of conflict between Israel and Hamas. This is a completely different scale, and we cannot take that as another part of the conflict. It's very different, and everything has changed since they decided to murder more than 1,000 people in Israel.
Which, to put it into context, is more in terms of the population than the number of lives that were lost in the attack on the Twin Towers and 9/11, isn't it?
Yes, it's much more, yeah, comparatively. But it's also the way that they have decided to do that. You know, we have screened for high senior journalists as well as for parliamentarians the footage of the horrors that Hamas have committed. And we have to understand, they wanted people to see that. They had GoPro videos on them. They have filmed with their iPhones. They have called their parents to tell them how happy they were and how proud their parents should be, because there's a Hamas terrorist who says, "I've killed 10 Jews with my bare hands. Can you be, how proud are you of me, Mom?" So this is the sick mind that these people had. And you were mentioning the protests in the streets of London.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's very disturbing for us, for the Jews in the UK, to hear week after week that there are people chanting for the murder of Jews. They're chanting Khaybar, Khaybar ya Yahud. They're chanting from the river to the sea, jihad. And you know, we have to be very careful about what these things mean. We have to be careful about the fact that to us, to everyone, it means the glorification of Hamas. You had people with, signs, clear signs of Hamas. This is very dangerous.
It's very, and to be clear, the police and the government and all politicians really have been really clear that that sort of anti-Semitic behaviour and chanting is completely unacceptable anywhere in the world, but, you know, for us here in the UK. Yeah. What we have seen the UK government and all political parties coming behind is this idea of humanitarian pauses and a humanitarian corridors to enable people to escape from Gaza. I know the Israeli Defence Force has been very active. It's been leaflet dropping from the air, asking people to leave areas. That's a great challenge, of course, if you don't have fuel, if you don't have access to a vehicle, if you're in hospital. Is there a possibility of opening more of those humanitarian corridors? Because let's make no bones about it, a lot of the civilian population in Gaza will not support Hamas and do not want to be caught in this conflict. Is there a possibility of enabling more civilians to escape from this conflict?
I agree with you. There are many people in Gaza who do not support Hamas. And for Israel, it's very clear that we are at war against Hamas and not against the civilians. And that's why we're trying to do everything we can in order to minimize civilian casualties. And that's something that is very important for us. About the humanitarian pauses, most of the population has already gone south. And we keep on sending leaflets and on allowing and ensuring that the civilians can go south, because Hamas are trying to dissuade them from going south. You know, they have put roadblocks on the street. They are targeting and killing people who are trying to move to the south. So we're doing everything we can in order to ensure that safe movement.
And the United Kingdom has made more aid available to Gaza, more humanitarian aid. are there going to be additional measures to enable that aid to go to people in the south of Gaza who've escaped the conflict?
So we are allowing aid to come into the Gaza Strip. We are also allowing fuel to come into the Gaza Strip. We make sure that this goes to the right hands and not in the hands of Hamas. And it's a process that takes time, but of course we are trying to allow as much aid as possible into the Gaza Strip. But we have to understand how it works. For the last 16 years, Hamas have diverted international aid, international money in order to build their city of terror. They have hundreds of kilometers of underground tunnels. There is one of the hostages that was released, one of the women, and she explained that it's like a spider web underneath the ground of tunnel terrors connecting one to each other. Every tunnel costs a lot of money, and this has been taken from humanitarian aid, from international support. So when we are taking every possible step to ensure that the aid goes directly to civilians, it takes time, and that's why it takes time to facilitate that. We completely agree about the need that this aid needs to reach out to the civilian population.
And in fact, the Israeli Defense Forces, when they've been in hospital, have been helping babies. We saw them rescuing babies from incubators. Matthew, I'm going to come to you quickly. Very, very harrowing, and thank you for talking about it. You're going to stick with us after the break, but very difficult conversation there. This is just an appalling human tragedy for everyone involved.
Absolutely. How can anybody's heart not break when we hear about the situation? I mean, the hostages situation is appalling, and obviously Hamas should release immediately and unconditionally the hostages, but also the scenes from Gaza are very distressing. So it's about getting that balance right, as you say, about getting aid into Gaza without in any way giving any succor to Hamas. And so that's the terribly narrow tightrope that both the Israeli government but also its Western allies are trying to navigate.
And it's correct to say that some of the rockets were constructed out of water pipes that had been put into Gaza by the European Union. So this idea of the diversion of aid, that was European Union aid, but it's a big issue for the UK as well, because people in the UK do not want to see any of the aid that we are
whether that's
providing given to a terrorist organisation.
Absolutely, because the British people are digging into their pockets and giving to the emergency appeals from Oxfam and others. So I think what the key thing is that as we go forward, that the Gaza Strip is never in the grip of Hamas, because actually when we see signs saying free Gaza, it's ultimately free Gaza from the appalling organisation that is Hamas.
Thank you.